We're with the Daily Iowan here on campus.
Yep.
And we wanted to focus most of the questions on universal free college.
Oh, I'm for that.
And the student loan debt cancellation. So just starting out, I know the universal free college program has received some criticism for subsidizing wealthy families. Just what are your thoughts on that criticism?
So let me start with how I propose to pay for this. It's with a 2-cent wealth tax. And the idea behind it is your first $50 million is free and clear, but when you hit your 50 millionth and first dollar of accumulated wealth, you got to pitch in 2 cents. And 2 cents on every dollar above that until you hit $1 billion, and then it goes up to 3 cents, right? That 2-cent wealth tax produces enough money to do universal childcare, universal pre-K, raise the wages of every childcare worker and preschool teacher in America, put an historic $800 billion investment into K-12, and to provide tuition-free 2-year college, technical school, 4-year college for anyone who wants an education, put $50 billion into our historically black colleges and universities to help level the playing field, and cancel student loan debt for 43 million Americans. So the way I see this, here's the fundamental question. Should the billionaires, this is the top 1/10 of 1%, the millionaires and billionaires who have more than $50 million, as you're putting together an economy, do you think we get more value from letting them keep that 2 cents to keep growing their fortunes, which they are doing, just on their own, not by more work. They just grow. They have their own money managers and everything else. Or to say, you made it big, good for you, but pitch in 2 cents so we can invest in an entire generation. I think the way as a country that we build a real future is by building opportunity for an entire generation. And so that's what that's all about for me.
So how will you ensure that the money from your 2-cent tax will go towards canceling student debt and tuition-free college rather than like Medicare or free preschool?
They're linked in the statute.
Okay. And how will you work with Republicans and other moderate Democrats?
So this is what's interesting. The 2-cent wealth tax is popular not just by party. Democrats, independents, and Republicans like it. And the reason they like it is they get it. They're being cheated right now. Look at it this way. The 99% today is paying about 7.2% of total wealth in taxes. The top 1/10 of 1%, they're paying 3.2%. So the idea is, come on, let's be just a little more fair here. And if we're just a little more fair, we can invest in this whole generation. So I think it's something that we're going to get everybody on board. This is actually going to be a good thing to run a general election on. We're going to pull in a lot of Republicans on this one.
Okay. And your plan cancels private loans and public loans. So with the complexity of the student loan system, what kind of resources will you maybe have to invest in the Department of Education so it has the capacity to navigate the different channels that people borrow loans from?
Boy, so you have really hit a point that a lot of people miss, and that is the terrible tangle in student loans right now at the Department of Education. But here's the good news. Since it doesn't matter what kind of loan you have, it makes it a whole lot easier to manage this program. So for anyone who's got a private loan, they need to refinance it into a public loan so it's in the system. Okay. But once it's in the system, doesn't matter what kind of loan it is. Doesn't matter whether you got it on, on Parent Plus or on one of the 3-year programs or one of the long programs, whatever the program is, the loans are all treated the same.
And will you have to hire more people into the Department of Education in order for that program to run?
It's an interesting question. I'm not sure if we'll need a lot more people or not, because again, this is not long-term management. Think of all the people who are there right now who are supposed to be managing the loan programs. That's mostly going to disappear. So we get those people into the cancellation, then we're done.
So moving more into the universal free college, I know your plan touches on this a little bit, but how will you ensure that public universities don't try to upcharge student fees other ways to get money?
Good question. So now you really want to get down into the weeds of this, but here's basically the structure, is that we're going to offer enough federal money to come in and replace your current tuition and fees. But there's a hook. And it says two things to the state that's running this school, because it's about public institutions. The first one is you have to keep putting the same amount of money, at least as much money as you're already putting in. So in other words, we're not going to pour water in the top while the state drains it out of the bucket in the bottom, right? This has got to be about having more money in the state universities, in University of Iowa here. So that's part one, and then part two is you have to agree that cost to students, you don't find other ways to increase cost to students. So you don't get to add a super duper new fee. Nope, this is about tuition and fees stay at zero from the student's perspective. Now, just so you know, there's some other bells and whistles in this as well about making sure that colleges and universities are really serving their students. There are parts about how for-profit colleges won't get to rip students off the way they have in the past. So there are some other pieces to use this moment to make sure that the benefit really does go to an entire generation.
And I know your plan would invest money into the states so they could implement that, but how would you make sure that all of the states would be on board with a federal program?
So I'm kind of counting on the fact that students all across these states would say, woohoo, we are not paying $15,000 a semester, $18,000 a semester, when we could be relieved of that burden if you just pick up the money from the federal government. I'm also relying on the fact the students can go somewhere else. So I think the combination of the students and the universities themselves pushing on the states while the federal government pushes from the other angle, I think is going to be pretty powerful here.
Okay. And there is, of course, a possibility that public universities being free would push private universities to maybe shut down. And I talked to an economics professor, and he had said that that would push a lot of people out of jobs in a lot of communities, and that could create political repercussions. So maybe how do you plan to address that?
So, you know, I've heard this argument, but do keep in mind, we've had private schools existing with public schools for centuries, right? And right now in K-12, there are private schools out there that exist right alongside public schools because somebody believes that what the private school offers is good value, that it's something that a particular student may need and a particular student's family may want to pay for. There's a second part to it as well, and that is, although because there are so many pieces, I don't always talk about it, one of the things I'm doing in this proposal is expanding Pell grants and expand them in both directions. That is, how big is a Pell grant so that it covers a larger share of costs. And the second part is how high is your family income for eligibility for Pell. Now, I'm pushing on that partly because I want to make sure that every student of modest income has a real and meaningful opportunity to go to school. But those Pell grants are not just limited to public schools, they're also available to students in private schools. This is about helping support students who are from modest income backgrounds get into public schools. In fact, excuse me, I met with leaders at one of the private schools here in Iowa who talked to me about the population they serve, that they serve a lot of low-income students. And they do a lot of recruiting to make sure that they bring these students in and give them something that, it's a much smaller school, it's nothing like the University of Iowa, much smaller school, to give them real opportunities, and they go out and raise money. nonprofit donations to be able to help support their mission. They said expanding Pell Grants would help the school enormously. And they're not worried about competing with University of Iowa. It's just a different place.
Mm-hmm.
Last question.
Okay. So I know your student loan debt cancellation cancels loans for graduate schools as well, but the universal free college does not cover graduate schools. So how would you ensure that public universities don't raise the tuition prices of graduate schools?
Well, the principal issue is let's get everybody in the door for a basic technical school, 2-year college, 4-year college to get them started. As you know, graduate schools, the schools themselves have to compete a lot more. People move a lot to go to graduate school. They find the best law program they can get into, the best medical program they can get into, the best archaeology, the best environmental sciences. And that puts schools in a very different place. Right now, as you probably know, there's a fair amount of graduate school education that takes place that's subsidized by grants and other scholarship funds because the universities want those grad students, and they want them in partly because they want the prestige of having these terrific grad students here, and they'll be the people who'll do wonderful things in the world. The current professors want those grad students to help them with their research and work and to carry on the line of research that they've started, and the schools want them to help out with the undergrads. So I think there's already a lot of pressure in this area. Is it perfect? Not by any stretch. But if students head into grad school with absolutely zero debt, that puts them in a pretty good place as they look around at which grad school programs they think offer the most to them. Yeah. Good. We get what we need?
Yep.
Good. I'm so glad you're asking about all this. It's really important stuff, Julia.
Yeah, no, thanks for taking the time to meet
Sure.
with us. Yeah, we
Oh,
appreciate
yeah.
it.
No, you bet. I want to talk about this. You know, because it really is. There's this fundamental question. How do we build a future going forward? We have a country that works great for the rich and the powerful, but it's not working for an entire generation of young people. If you're born into privilege, the system works great. But for everyone else, these opportunities are shrinking up. Me, I went to a commuter college that cost $50 a semester. And that's how I ended up as a special needs teacher. That opportunity just isn't out there anymore. Nobody gets that chance anymore. And that means more and more of our country either doesn't get the education they want and need, or they get crushed by student loan debt. 2020 is our chance to change that. That's what we got to do.